Here's everything you might have missed in the Book of Boba Fett Episode 6. Holy smokes, Star Wars fans, things are heating up on the Book of Boba Fett, and not just because Tatooine has twin sons. The 6th chapter of the series, entitled From the Desert Comes a Stranger, has 100% more Boba Fett than last week, but still shines its spotlight elsewhere as all the moving pieces come together for next week's finale. They're playing four-dimensional Jarek, man. Anyway, directed and co-written by Dave Filoni, Chapter 6 builds on last week's stunning episode and meaningfully advances both the plot of this show and The Mandalorian in one fell swoop. With the return of some familiar faces, unexpected arrivals, and explosive revelations, this was another top-notch hour of Star Wars. We're gonna break everything down, including all of the Easter eggs for you in just a moment, but as always, if you prefer to read all about it, we've got you covered over on Nerdist.com. However, in order to do so, we obviously need to spoil what happens in the Book of Boba Fett Episode 6. So if you haven't seen it yet, leave now before it's too late.
Think it through.
Alright, let's get into it, shall we? While the Book of Boba Fett may feel more like The Mandalorian Season 2.5 over the past couple episodes, it's all building to a showdown between Robert Fettuccine's Tatooine Syndicate and the Pike Syndicate in next week's finale. And we can debate what the comparative lack of Boba Fett in his eponymous book says about this show later, but for now, let's break down the episode. Chapter 6 begins with a group of Pike Syndicate goons discussing their plans to deal spice on Tatooine. Unfortunately, this here's Mos Pelgo, brother, and they're interrupted by the Marshal of Mos Pelgo himself, Cobb Vanth. Now, if you forget who Timothy Oliphant's smooth-talking lawman is, well, you're completely justified in doing so because it's been a minute. Cobb Vanth was first introduced in the Aftermath trilogy of novels that document the fall of the Empire post-Return of the Jedi. A former slave on Tatooine, he becomes a lawman to help protect people from the crime syndicates who seize power in the wake of Jabba the Hutt's demise, which is exactly what we see playing out here. We first met Cobb in live action in The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1. Cobb wound up snagging Boba Fett's Mandalorian armor from those Jawa traders who looted our eponymous hero's body in the very first episode of this show. Anyway, more importantly for fans of obscure Star Wars props, we see a Camtono once again. First carried by a character named Willrow Hood in Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back, this prop, which is actually an ice cream maker, became something of an in-joke among Star Wars fans who found it patently ridiculous. The Mandalorian has since repurposed them as portable security containers, and now they're used to transport everything from drug money to, as we'll see later, high-grade explosives. Now, Cobb Vanth makes no bones about his position about whether the Pike Syndicate is welcome to run spice through the Mos Pelgo territories. After figuring out which one of them is the smart one, Cobb sends the lone survivor on his way and kicks the chest full of spice over instead of having a week-long bender to see if he's really the Kwisatz Haderach. What? Look, it's a matter of time until Star Wars has one as well. I know, they kinda do all- shut up. Next, we catch up with everyone's favorite Mandalorian, and no, not Boba Fett. Folks, I'm talking about Din Djarin, he's back! The recently excommunicated Darksaber wielder makes the pilgrimage to a mysterious verdant planet where Grogu is currently training to be a Jedi under Luke Skywalker. This might be Ajan Kloss, the moon of Endor where Luke trained his sister Leia in the ways of the Force in the wake of Return of the Jedi, at least according to the Rise of Skywalker, the visual dictionary. Honestly, when it comes to green backwater planets where you train in the ways of the Force, it's a much nicer place than Dagobah ever was.
This place gives me the creeps.
After some rad close-up shots of Din in his sweet new Naboo starfighter, he follows a signal to find R2-D2. The adorable astromech droid leads Din through bamboo forest towards the construction site of Luke's future Jedi Academy, which is being assembled by ant-like droids. As far as I can tell, these droids are brand new for this episode, and they seem a lot more efficient and humane than the slave labor that dominates much of the rest of the galaxy far, far away. But maybe these droids are only good for building very specific stone huts or something, so who knows. At the very least, they channel the spirit of Mace Windu when they build Mando a bench.
Is that a bench?
Take a seat.
Next, we catch up with the wee baby Grogu meditating in a field with his new teacher, Luke Skywalker. First of all, let me say, thank goodness Lucasfilm hired that YouTuber Shamook who improved the deepfake from Mandalorian Season 2, because Luke looks so much better this time around. Yes, he was a little Din Djarin at first, and there are still some wonky bits this episode, like when he's in the forest, but by and large, it looks so much more like the Luke we remember. While Grogu's supposed to be meditating, he does his best impression of Kina from Final Fantasy IX and uses the Force to levitate a frog towards his mouth for a midday snack. Luke shows Grogu exactly why he should stick with his training by using the Force to lift all the nearby frogs from the water in a truly riveting display of power. I said... When Luke and Grogu go for a walk, Luke has to help Grogu along using the Force so the little dude can leap ahead and keep pace with this much larger Jedi. And look, when I say much larger Jedi, I'm not talking about bigger Luke, I'm just talking about the fact that he's bigger than Grogu. Anyway, Luke mentions Yoda to Grogu for the first time, but the kiddo doesn't seem to know this late great Jedi Master. In fact, Grogu doesn't seem to know much of anything about his past. But using the Force, Luke helps Grogu access repressed memories. We see in a horrifying flashback a glimpse into the aftermath of Order 66, the galaxy-wide purge of the Jedi Order, and in particular, the night of the siege on the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. There we see 3 mystery Jedi desperately trying to defend the younglings at the Jedi Temple from a group of encroaching clone troopers. And it appears as though Grogu is about to be captured or killed, but then he wakes up. So the question remains, who exactly saved Grogu from Order 66? It's also oddly fitting that while Anakin Skywalker was responsible for so much of Grogu's deep-seated trauma, Luke Skywalker is going to help Grogu heal. Then again, Ben Solo's also going to burn Luke's future school to the ground, so I guess the Skywalker's taken every other generational approach when it comes to embracing the dark side. Grogu awakens from his reverie to find himself back in the field with Luke, who says he'll teach Grogu to protect himself using the Force. Mando, meanwhile, dozes off on a bench and awakens to find Ahsoka Tano waiting for him. R2 apparently pulled a fast one on Din Djarin and took him to see Ahsoka Tano instead so they wouldn't distract young Grogu from his training. Ahsoka mentions that she's an old friend of the Skywalker family, which is the understatement of the century, referencing her past as Anakin Skywalker's Padawan. She confirmed that this is in fact the future site of Luke's Jedi Temple, and Grogu is intended to be its very first student. It's a meeting that's just as important for Din Djarin as it is for Grogu, as Ahsoka questions whether Grogu is still a Mandalorian foundling or if he's a Padawan now. Why do you have to choose though? Clearly neither Ahsoka nor Luke have heard of Tar Vizsla. I mean guys, you can be a Mandalorian and a Jedi, canonically. Anyway, jokes aside, while Grogu and Mando still care about each other very deeply, their attachments to one another is going to make it difficult for Grogu to fully commit to his Jedi training. Ultimately, Din Djarin sees the truth in Ahsoka's words and leaves Grogu's gift with her. Honestly, folks, it's probably for the best because can you imagine Din explaining to Luke Skywalker that he's gonna go help noted Imperial bounty hunter Boba Fett wage a gang war on Luke's home planet? I don't think that would go over too well. Now, moving on, Luke and Grogu watch the Mando fly away as Grogu reaches groggily towards the sky. And much like Luke carried Yoda on his back in Empire Strikes Back, now he carries Grogu in a handy backpack. Except rather than being part of Luke's training, this time it's part of Grogu's. Luke tries to test the little guy's force jumping abilities, but first decides to show off with some parkour instead, including his famous front flip from Empire Strikes Back. He even springboards off a Nerf's head, which might explain why they're so scruffy looking. People are always just using them like they're jump pads. Anyway, the sequence culminates with Luke giving Grogu a bird's-eye view of the countryside as John Williams' iconic score swells in the background. And what follows is a delightful training montage as Grogu learns how to use the Force to propel his tiny body and avoid getting zapped by the training remote. Now, you may remember this device from its very first appearance back in the original Star Wars when Obi-Wan forced Luke to learn how to use the Force to deflect its blaster bolts using a lightsaber. And slowly but surely, Grogu does learn the Chumbawamba principle of always getting back up again after you've been knocked down. And eventually he jumps around like a little spider monkey, or more accurately like that little bastard Yoda in Battlefront 2. He's so fast and his hitbox is so small. I hate him. Then what follows is something that Star Wars fans have been wanting to see for literal years and years. Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano together on screen for the very first time. It's a fascinating dynamic given how close Ahsoka was with Luke's father. Luke alludes to the fact that even more of Grogu's memories are still repressed, but Ahsoka tries to put a positive spin on things. And if you didn't feel a tug at your heartstrings when she tells Luke that he's so much like his father, well, I guess I don't even know you anymore, do I, Kevin? After Luke and Ahsoka bid each other farewell, we then return to Tatooine at long last, where the Mando finally joins up with Boba Fett's crew just in time for Fennec's briefing. With the other crime families pledging neutrality, the Major Domo in their custody, and Mayor Mok Shaiz is conveniently off-world.
It was a scheduled vacation, actually.
The stage is set for a showdown with the Pike Syndicate next week. And apparently Din and Chrysanthemum qualify as enough muscle to act as enforcers, but between the mod bikers and the deeply ineffectual Gamorrean guards, Robert Fettuccine's Tatooine syndicate is in dire need of foot soldiers.
I might be able to help with that.
En route to Mos Pelgo, Din flies his recently refurbished starfighter over the Jawa Sandcrawler, and it's 100% more metal looking now that it has the skull of the Krayt Dragon they killed back in The Mandalorian Season 2 strapped to the top of this desert-dwelling vehicle. Regardless, those fuzzy little idiots are thrilled to see their handiwork in action, and they even wave to Mando as he flies overhead. And as expected, the Mando pays a visit to Mos Pelgo's main hub of activity, the recently renamed Freetown, where Cobb keeps his people safe, even sans armor. And quick side note, Freetown is actually what the town was called in Cobb Vanth's very first appearance in the Aftermath book. Also of note, Freetown's Weequay bartender is played by W. Earl Brown, which makes this a mini Deadwood reunion for both him and Timothy Olyphant. Anyway, Mando wants Cobb to supply a garrison of fighting men and women who can augment Boba's forces, but unfortunately for Cobb Vanth, Din flies off right as from the desert comes a stranger, just as the title foretold. And as we foretold in a recent Nerdist Now video, this is none other than Cad Bane, appearing in live action for the very first time and voiced once again by Corey Burton. You know, in case that hat and duster weren't a dead giveaway, and I gotta say, he looks awesome. First appearing in Hostage Crisis, the final episode of the Clone Wars first season, Cad Bane is one of the most fearsome bounty hunters in the galaxy far, far away. He even once killed a man just because he liked his hat, as we see in the Clone Wars episode The Box.
What are you looking at? It's a nice hat.
Despite training Boba Fett in the ways of bounty hunting, Cad Bane also has a long-standing beef with Fennec Shand. When we last saw Cad, Fennec and Clone Force 99 were the bane of his existence on the Bad Batch. Cad's attempt to kidnap Omega, the only unmodified female clone made from Jango Fett's DNA template, was botched, and he had no choice but to run away in shame. Now, Boba Fett and Cad Bane also very nearly had a showdown before as well. At Star Wars Celebration 2017, an unfinished scene depicting these two bounty hunters duking it out made its official debut. We see a young Boba Fett standing up to a power-hungry Cad Bane and facing off in a duel that supposedly killed Cad Bane and left Boba with his helmet's iconic blaster dent. Clearly, though, rumors of both of their deaths were greatly exaggerated. For how much longer, though, that remains to be seen. But we do know that Cad Bane is apparently working for the Pike Syndicate, which makes it painfully clear when he murders the deputy and shoots Cobb Vanth in cold blood, potentially killing the Marshal of Mos Pelgo as well. And Bane clearly has no love for Boba Fett either.
Boba Fett is a cold-blooded killer who worked for the Empire.
While Cad Bane is clearly working for the Pike Syndicate here, he's also a Duros, an alien species we first glimpsed in the Mos Eisley Cantina way back in A New Hope, so maybe he has some allies on this planet as well. Anyway, the arrival of Cad Bane on the side of the Pikes isn't the only explosive revelation in this episode. Back at Madame Garsa's sanctuary bar in Mos Espa, a pair of Pikes pack a pint of pain into what I'm calling Chekhov's Camtono. And before Madame Garsa and her clients can put two and two together, the bomb hidden inside the Camtono detonates, presumably killing everyone inside the cantina in one of the Pike Syndicate's most dastardly and devastating attacks to date. More importantly for Boba, it's a resounding rebuttal to the idea of ruling with respect instead of spice. That's a spicy rule. And while I'm not holding out hope for Madame Garsa or her patrons, R.I.P. Jennifer Beals' character, I will note that Max Rebo was conspicuously absent from that scene. Now, considering he also survived the attack on Jabba's sail barge, I can only conclude that Max Rebo is either resistant to explosions, or this legendary jizz musician is secretly working for the Pikes. Regardless, until they show me the body, Max Rebo lives on in my heart. The episode ends by bringing us back to Luke Skywalker's future Jedi Academy site, where he and Grogu sit cross-legged together meditating. Luke finally gives the Mando's gift to Grogu, which, as we and many others predicted, is a tiny suit of Beskar chainmail armor, and it bears a shocking resemblance to Frodo's mithril chain shirt from Lord of the Rings. Now, Luke also gives Grogu a heartbreaking choice to make in this scene. He basically pulls an Air Bud on the poor little guy. On one end of the blanket, Luke puts the Beskar armor that his father figure had handmade for him. On the other end, Luke offers Master Yoda's old lightsaber. He tells Grogu, if you choose the armor, you'll return to your friend the Mandalorian, but you'll forsake your Jedi training. And if you choose the lightsaber, you'll be the first student in my sweet Jedi Academy, and also you get this forbidden glow stick. Think of all the frogs you can roast. Come on, buddy. Obviously, the episode ends before Grogu can make his fateful choice, and that's gonna drive me ballistic until hopefully we get our answers in the final episode of the Book of Boba Fett next week, which, by the way, legally has to have more Boba Fett in it, or else they can't call this show the Book of Boba Fett.
I should still show my face in town.
You sure that's a good idea?
Anyway, folks, there you have it. That's everything we spotted in the Book of Boba Fett Episode 6. With just one episode to go, Boba's gonna have to put some blood, sweat, and tears into his battle against the Pike Syndicate if he wants to emerge triumphant. The bigger question, though, is how much of the finale will be devoted to Boba Fett, the title character, versus setting up future shows. We'll just have to wait and see, but in the meantime, we have plenty of other Star Wars deep dives just waiting for you over on Nerdist.com. For now, though, tell us, what did you think of this episode? Did you spot anything that we missed?
Think it through.
Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.